I think at this point we can all agree that betrayals are pretty much a staple for Bridgerton. In every season, the characters, both main and secondary, have to deal with it. And whilst my knee jerk reaction is to say that betrayals exist to basically drive drama and plot, I've been thinking about this topic for quite a while, and I finally arrived at what I consider another reason why betrayals are so central to the story of Bridgerton. I believe they serve three other purposes, or they can serve one of three other purposes: to force a character to confront the truth they would otherwise not speak of, to bring characters to a point of healing, or to show the depth of these characters and what they are capable of. Take Bridgerton season 1, for example, and let's look at the character of Portia Featherington, because prior to the moment when Archibald Featherington breaks down in his wife's arms and admits to her the magnitude of his debt and how he's basically impoverished his family because of his addiction, our perception and understanding of Portia went really in one direction. She was a mama of the ton, obsessed with her daughters getting a good match, who finds herself saddled with a pregnant and unmarried ward, who has to then immediately step up to the plate to try and resolve the situation. One, to help stabilize Marina's prospects, and two, to save our own daughters from ruin. But I don't think we all really understood the depth of Portia's character until after Archibald's death. Because I think the betrayal she suffered from him was twofold. The first was that he had impoverished their family and still tried to hide it, a situation that almost ruined Philippa's marriage to Albion. And then the second betrayal came after his death. Because now not only was he gone, but he still left them in debt. His death was not something he chose, but his actions, taken step by step, was what led them to that point. And Portia had two choices. She could either crumble or she could rise, and rise she does. Does that involve sweet talking Jack Featherington and getting caught briefly in a romance with him until she realizes that he doesn't prioritize her daughters, at which point she in turn betrays him, setting him up for the fall of their partnership while she reaps all the benefits that come with that? Yes, it does. Archibald's betrayal nearly ruined their family, and her betrayal of Jack saved them. It's very poetic and makes for a very compelling story. And of course, there's everything that goes down with Daphne and Simon. Clearly, Daphne feels the betrayal of Simon choosing to lie to her about him not being able to father a child, and she responds in turn by betraying him with what is very clearly sexual assault. And then a couple of episodes later, she betrays his trust again, this time by reading letters he wrote to his father, which otherwise would not have been shared with anybody else. Now, the show clearly uses that betrayal as a way to get Daphne to understand the reason and truth behind Simon's betrayal of her, which is tied to the abuse his father put him through as a result of his selective mutism, which in turn bred in Simon a fear that he could turn into his father, especially if they have a child who, like him, ends up being selectively mute. The show doesn't really go as much in depth into that part as the book does, but it really is part of the reason why Simon was scared of having kids, as he didn't want their children to go through the exact same thing that he had. And so Daphne's second betrayal is what in turn leads to both of them being able to confront Simon's scars and assuage his fears in a way that is able to help him heal. With season 2, however, the betrayal is more focused on what Edwina rightfully considers a betrayal of the man she's to marry and her sister, when she discovers that Anthony is in love with Kate and Kate is in love with Anthony, at which point she runs away from the altar and refuses to marry Anthony Bridgerton. Now, I know from my comment section that everyone has their thoughts and opinions about how things played out between Kate and Anthony and Edwina. I happen to belong to the camp that does consider Kate and Anthony's actions as a betrayal of Edwina's trust. So I understand why she's so upset. However, I'm also of the opinion that the entire situation needed to happen. Because one, Anthony Bridgerton, that big dunderhead, would not have admitted it until it was hitting him in the face otherwise. But most importantly, because Kate needed it to heal. Now, before you think I'm saying otherwise, yes, I do think the situation in itself was horrible and poor Edwina didn't deserve to have her heart broken that way. But I do also believe that if events hadn't played out the way they did specifically, Kate would never have had the chance to have the conversation she did with Mary, where she finally gets to spill to her mother that she's so grateful for how Mary took her in and didn't treat her any differently from Edwina, which is the point when Mary realizes that Kate always felt indebted and undeserving of her love and care. Now, Kate needed to hear that she's deserving of all the love in the world, as that is a necessary step for her to accept the love that Anthony Bridgerton would soon give her. She spent her entire life since she was a kid thinking that she had to do things to earn and be deserving of love. And it took the entire mess of things with Edwina's wedding for Mary to finally sit her daughter down and speak the words that Kate needed to hear, to heal and move on and accept the love that is hers to get when Anthony finally gets around to using the actual words that Kate's been waiting for him to tell her. And of course, we can't talk about Betrayals in season 2 and not bring up Eloise discovering Penelope's secret identity as Lady Whistledown and the betrayal she felt at her friend hiding something that big from her. And also the fact that Lady Whistledown, aka Penelope, had reviewed her meetings with the radicals in order to throw the queen off of her scent. But her response to learning the truth is also meant to give us a deeper insight into Eloise as a character, her frustration that she really doesn't know her best friend as much as she thought she did, and also that Penelope is able to achieve so much of what Eloise wants for herself, and that's something that Pen, who is angry, also throws in Eloise's face. Their rift is one that is filled with hurt and jealousy that makes the betrayal sting, but it's also an avenue for a lot of what's been left unsaid to finally come to light. Now, as much as I'm someone who utterly adores Penelope, I'm not going to pretend that her apology when Eloise discovers her identity wasn't lacking. But I'm also not going to ignore the fact that Pen's room had just been ransacked and she was feeling very violated. In the scene, they both clearly spoke to hurt, and hurt they most certainly did. As much as it hurts to see that happen on screen, it was also necessary to help mend their relationship so that when things were discovered with regards Cressida's claiming to be Lady Whistledown and Penelope is able to come to the Bridgerton's rescue, it means that their relationship is on the road to being mended. And this time around, it's going to be built on the more solid foundation that is the truth. Of course, what this then means is that it is now Colin's turn to feel betrayed, that the woman is about to marry, Penelope Featherington, who's been his friend for years, Pen, who he thought he knew as much as he knew the rest of his family, is someone who has this whole other life that he has no idea of. And what it then creates is a situation where he gets to learn what matters to Pen. He gets to realize that she's so much more than the unmarried best friend of his baby sister that he had always assumed. The scene of Penelope letting Colin, Portia and Eloise know that she has more than enough to pay off Cressida's initial blackmail sum is always chef's kiss to me, because whilst the admission throws everyone off and you can legit see Portia thinking of everything the family had gone through whilst Pen was sitting on a fortune, it also forces them to look at Penelope in a whole new light. Lady Whistledown was a successful business that she built all on her own, scratch by scratch, brick by brick, page by page, and its earnings is something that is all Pen's. And then there's Cressida's betrayal of Eloise, which we can say was set up by the fact that Eloise didn't pay attention to Cressida's troubles and the marriage her parents were trying to force her into. However, it still doesn't compare to Cressida following Araminta's urging and writing the lies about the Bridgertons in the false Lady Whistledown issue, a situation that was rectified almost immediately by Penelope publishing her first issue in a long while, where she immediately denounces Cressida as being Lady Whistledown and sets things to right, bringing everyone to the realization that Cressida's lies are just that, lies, not gossip. The entire situation is meant to serve the purpose of giving us a better view and understanding of Cressida Cowper. As much as she might be a queen bee, she's someone who has to bend to the will of her parents. A situation that is vastly different from Pen's and Eloise. And when Cressida asks her mother why they had to write such lies about the Bridgertons, it is both a betrayal because Araminta used her daughter to settle a score, but we also get the confirmation that Cressida's way of betraying her friends and walking through the ton like everyone's against her and she has to always look out for number one is something that her mother's pressured her into, inculcating it therefore as her own motto. And of course, there's Portia being hit with the information that her daughter is Lady Whistledown and how betrayed she felt at realizing everything Penelope is written about their family, but which ultimately leads to her feeling pride in her daughter at everything Pen's been able to accomplish and how she's definitely someone that even Portia never really knew like she thought she did. And this, of course, applies more broadly to the rest of the ton when Pen gives her public reveal. Penelope is able to bring the truth of her true identity into the public, and everyone is able to finally come to the realization that the one they've always written off, the one they never paid much attention to, has been the one spilling their secrets for the wider world to read. It pushes them to see her in a whole new light, which, to be honest, is what everyone who learns the truth of her all have to experience. And they get to see themselves too as people who would ignore such a talent. Of course, the Queen's forgiveness does help ease the sting of the betrayal for the rest of the ton, but it also has me wondering if maybe that might be something that could potentially be explored in season 4. Maybe there will be people who might not be able to get over the betrayal and want to do something about it. Of course, these are just my thoughts. I would, as always, love to hear yours. Do you think betrayals matter that much in Bridgerton? What purpose do you think they serve? Do you think the characters should react even more strongly to the betrayals that they've experienced so far in the show? Please let me know in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share this video if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. If you cannot, however, consider checking out my other channels. I have a channel dedicated to me playing video games, if that's more your thing. Or if you're one of the people who finds my voice soothing, you can check out my ASMR channel. I have the links to all my other channels in the description box, so do go check them out. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.